So yeah, my name is Trent Simmons. I am the founder of the World Spirit of the Game Foundation, which was formed to help individuals and organizations maximize their positive impact on the world. I am joined by one of our U.S. board members, Mr. Doug Karr. Doug, would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Trent. I was with Kent last night. I'm Doug Karr. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I got my start in healthcare. 20 years ago, I was involved with marrying up healthcare with the internet and co-founded a telemedicine business that within 3 years went public. And got involved with helping entrepreneurs, both on the for-profit side and the nonprofit side, to live out their dreams. So I have been kind of coaching founders for several years and got involved with a global nonprofit around character and ethics, which got me very, very interested in what Trent is doing right now, or what we are doing with Spirit of the Game. So to me, the idea of marrying up social responsibility with personal accountability is just something that, to me, is a message that needs to be taken around the world. And it's a pleasure to be here with you today, and it's a pleasure to be a part of Spirit of the Game Foundation.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, my personal background is also as a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 8 years old, and been self-employed most of my adult life. I've been a part of 14 different businesses, made money 12 times, and you could say that I failed 11 times because I did not find my purpose, that I would be doing okay with a business, and I would realize after a couple of years that that was not it was not fulfilling. It was not something that I could see myself spending the rest of my life doing. And throughout all of that journey, never did I ever have anybody come and sit down and say, Trent, what is the social impact of your businesses? It just wasn't part of the equation. The equation was, can you make money? Can you provide a service? Can you get customers? Can you, provide some jobs? And yeah, I was able to provide jobs for my local community and provide a service. And in that sense, the businesses were successful. But in the sense of actually giving meaning, additional meaning to my life, just beyond the challenge of solving a business and getting it off the ground, that part was always lacking. Nobody ever came along, and I didn't go looking. Also, it just wasn't part of my upbringing to think that I, as an individual entrepreneur, had any type of obligation to do good in the world. There was always the government's job or NGO's job or somebody else's job to fix the world's problems. I just need to provide a service so that people will pay me for this. So that led to the formation of the Spirit of the Game Foundation, and we are very heavily into entrepreneurial support. And we do provide conventional coaching and consulting for startups on how they can refine their business and make more money. But our niche, our passion, is really on helping every single entrepreneur to identify, develop, and continually refine their company's social impact platform. And one of our taglines is impact is for everyone. And that's one of our long-term goals as an organization, is actually to eliminate the term social entrepreneurship, because we think that every entrepreneur should be a social entrepreneur. We think that in the future, nobody is going to buy your product unless you can give them a compelling reason to do so beyond just a better mousetrap or a better price point. So I'll explain a little bit more about the organization, and then we will actually be soliciting from the audience. We want to hear from somebody in the audience, up to 3 different people. You have a chance to present your business, 2 to 3 minutes of just what your business is really all about, and another 2 to 3 minutes talking about your current social impact platform and some ideas you have, maybe you'd like some guidance on, or that are just so far out there like you haven't even been able to conceive that. We'll give you some of our ideas as well. So it's kind of a two-way street. You tell us what you're thinking about, and we'll also tell you some fresh ideas from our side. And then at the end, there might be an opportunity for some audience participation where some audience members might also have a chance to weigh in on that. So if there's anybody in the audience, and hopefully most of you are here because you do have at least a business idea, definitely be prepared to raise your hand when we open up the floor in about 5 minutes. And we'll take 3 people to pitch their idea, and we'll give you our feedback. So a little bit more about the organization. We are organized into 4 main pillars. So we have a global impact coaching coalition that works with corporations, with entrepreneurs, with universities, with schools, and with individuals. And that is developed to directly influence those areas of society as well as fund our nonprofit work. We're establishing an international network of national and local nonprofits to work on everything from women's empowerment to youth leadership, climate and sustainability, diversity and inclusion, almost every major societal topic. We have teams that are working on that because our goal as an organization is to deliver our national chapters with as broad a menu as possible so they can choose the solutions that make the most sense for their society. Our third pillar is the impactful networks, which are originally they were just about finding disruptors of dysfunctional systems and bringing them together from all different walks of life. More recently, that's taken on the impetus of the impactful networks. So the first one we're launching this summer will be the Impactful Women's Network. It helps women from all over the world to maximize their impact professionally, personally, and with their investments. This fall, we'll be launching the Impactful Business Network that, again, helps all different sizes of businesses to maximize their company's social impact platform. And then finally, our fourth pillar is the social movement. And in many ways, this is what everything else is geared towards supporting. Because as we look around the world, we see that there are more and more people every day that are waking up to the fact that our previous economic systems don't work. They don't work for the world. They don't work for society. They don't work for the environment. And we need something new. But the average person in society does not feel empowered to make a difference. So as a result, you have a lot of people staying in jobs, supporting companies that aren't doing any good in the world, and in many cases are doing harm, or continuing to support those companies with their consumer decisions. Whatever the case may be, there's a lot of people, good people, that are basically either on the sidelines or on the wrong side of progress simply because they don't know how to live a better life. They don't have a new definition of winning. The definition of success for most people is still how much money can you make? We want to replace that definition with how many people can you help? And when we reach that tipping point, that'll be a society changer. That will be something that basically changes the future of humanity if we all can agree that it doesn't matter how much money you make in your life. What matters is what you do with it. What matters is how many people you help along the way and how many people you help once you're in that position to start giving back. So that's what we want to do, is we want to help entrepreneurs to get to that position as fast as possible so that you're able to give back, but also do a lot of good along the way. A little bit more about our network. We work, again, because of those 4 pillars, we work with NGOs, social enterprises, universities, corporations, pretty much any type of organization or individual will have a place within our network. And we're uniquely positioned as the nexus point between all of those areas that we can draw the best ideas from each and help them to influence each other. So what's new about this network is it's based on a philosophy. We have if you go to our website, spiritofthegame.org, and look at our core principles at the beginning, that really sets the foundation for everything we do, and it influences how we go about it and where we're going. But also our methodology. But we don't think that any single area of society has all of the answers. Otherwise, many problems would already be solved. And again, a lot of people say, oh, that's the government's job to solve that problem. They're part right and they're part wrong. Yes, you do need government intervention in some cases, but the government can't do it all on their own. And anybody that's still waiting for the government to solve all our problems has not been paying attention. We need all areas of society to do that. And that's really where we specialize, is on bringing in that hybrid approach. And then finally, the marketing power of developing something organically that is at the same time an NGO, a life philosophy, and a social movement that really links together all the different areas of your life. Because if you think, there's a lot of people that behave completely different in a corporate setting than they ever would in their family life, and somehow they try to balance that, but it's a disconnect. It's something that is not endurable in the long term. So finally, that brings us to creative impact. And in about 2 minutes, like I said, I'm going to open up the floor to anybody that is ready to pitch your business. But creative impact, we believe that your social impact platform should be as unique as you are as an individual. We believe that it should tie in to your full business network. We believe that it should tie in to your unique strengths. And it should be something that, A, you're passionate about, but also makes sense to your customers. Or even, ideally speaking, if we get there, we will help you to create brand ambassadors from people who don't even buy your product themselves. So there's more to the presentation, but I'm going to pause here. And Doug, did you want to add on to that a little bit?
No, I think it was well said. We have our first taker, who is Farah, who is going to present to us. I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about her social responsibility, as well as why she feels like social responsibility leads to not only fulfillment personally, but financial stability for her organization. So just as Trent was saying, we want to be able to make social entrepreneurism to be entrepreneurism. I think the other side to this is making sure that we recognize that, social responsibility is financial stability. So with that said, Farah, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your organization?
Hi, I'm actually don't have an organization yet. I'm an illustrator and a student at Kingston School of Art. I have an idea that I did prototype and I did test. So for me, being socially responsible is before it meaning being financially stable. I think as Trent explained, it's like, this is the future of entrepreneurship, not only from a financial perspective, in my opinion, but also in terms of like the world will have trouble if we don't take care of it. So from that perspective, and also like relying on my passion about like illustrating and creating for children, I came up with a toy, but I'm going to start my pitch that I prepared. So I'm going to read a little bit from my notes. So family structures are drastically changing, and humanity's outlook on people's differences is also shifting. Babies are born into a new world where acknowledging and embracing these individual and group differences is the way forward to a kinder future. This remains unconsidered in children's toys, which are one of the pillars for child development. So based on my experience of creating and illustrating for children and my interest in applying art and design to tackle social issues, I would like to present to you Family Playhouse. Family Playhouse includes 94 dolls representing different age groups, ethnicities, abilities, disabilities, body shapes, and genders. It also includes 16 rooms and 8 rooftops that can be put together like puzzle pieces, allowing a child to build inclusive homes as small as one room and as big as a mansion. The toy has 3 functions. It is educational, allowing parents and teachers to have an honest conversation about empathy, acceptance and belonging with children, using a booklet of prompts devised by an education specialist and a child psychologist. It is therapeutic. It can be used by play therapists who rely on the use of miniature worlds to treat children, but this time with a tool that is widely inclusive. It allows open-ended play, boosting the child's linguistic, creative, and cognitive faculties, yeah, and allowing fun time alone or with friends. So yeah, this is in a nutshell my idea. Thank you.
All right, Doug, I'll allow you to go first.
Well, thank you so much. This is wonderful. A couple of things just from a background perspective. You talked about this being your passion. Describe for me a little bit how your passion came up and where you see yourself in this in the long run.
So I'm an illustrator, and I've worked with publishers. I've developed. I was like a creative lead on some apps, so interactive, like digital toys for children. And these apps are educational. So we were kind of teaching children the Arabic language. So I was always immersed in that world. And coming on to Kingston School of Art, on the course we kind of got introduced to something called like the social design. So how to use art making and art and design thinking to solve social problems. So this is how it came about, and I think it aligns. Not I think, I believe it aligns with my values. So I think, and I'm like Trent. I've always been like, if something doesn't sit well, I cannot really continue doing it. So I believe that this sits really well with me. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And as it grows up, what do you expect it to do from it when it's firing on all cylinders, so to speak? What are your expectations and your vision for this?
So I have so many, like I have a notebook. Every time I have an idea, I just note it down. And I think I have plenty of ideas. It just, with time, like they will come together in a way. But to begin with, I want to start, I want to put it on the UK market, and then like expand it to Europe and the States. So yeah, this is like the first idea on how I'm going to kind of create a business out of it. And then I need to, while doing that, I need to put like a product development strategy that will kind of guarantee the longevity of my brand, because it's not only that product, it's going to be a brand, and I'm going to kind of develop more inclusive toys that kind of tackle the changes of society, because society will not stop the change, right? So my company will keep on shifting and changing with the shifts of the world.
Excellent. So if I had to ask you to rank at this point, the idea of, as you implement this, where do you think you're strong and where do you think you're weak in regards to, let's say, brand identity, appealing to people, and the financial stability of this?
So I think I've always been like a visual person. Like I think I can create something that is visually appealing. I also I'm a critical thinker, so I really like the research and everything. So I'm very much confident in terms of product development and how to kind of develop it further and how to expand on it. I need some support with everything that has to do with the so far I believe it's like the rough world of entrepreneurship and like making money and all of this. So it's like I need some guidance. Like I don't see myself as someone who's like, I just want to make money. I want to like launch a product and like make money out of every one of you. Honestly, I want to create something that brings me money but also makes a difference in the world. So I really care about this.
Well, yeah. And I think that's wonderful. So, I mean, I'll take a lesson out of kind of my nonprofit side, and it applies to the for-profit side as well. And that is that no money, no mission. So we have to find ways to be able to tie our financial responsibility into our social responsibility. So what I'm hearing from you is that from a content perspective, that you would rate yourself high, that you've got a great product, and you think that it's very well positioned to be able to connect with other people. And I think that's tremendous. So, but what needs to happen is the marketing channels need to be opened up. The brand identity needs to be formulated and tested. the financial aspect and the financial storytelling, which is as important as the storytelling that goes on from a personal accountability of implementing and utilizing the product, needs to be fleshed out. So I think you're in a great spot. It's a great start. Trent, I'm going to let you kind of address where she's at from a personal accountability perspective, as well as a social responsibility perspective, so that we can kind of tie this up into a nice little bow between social responsibility and financial wherewithal.
Yeah, and I see that Emma Haynes has her hand up. I'm assuming that means she would like to present next. Doug, has anybody else messaged you yet, or is it just still Emma?
Emma would be next.
Okay. Yeah. So from my perspective, really, one of the first areas I immediately go to is for an entrepreneur, especially pre-launch, is do you have a product or a service that could benefit nonprofits? Because a lot of people really overlook that potential partnership in terms of launch. That a established corporation will generally care a lot more about your resume, your backline. They can't afford to take risks. They don't have the margin. They're like, hey, if this is not proven, I'm going to spend my time helping you to prove it. In some cases, they will. There's an advantage of being a student that definitely works in your favor when you're going and approaching a for-profit. But I could see some type of almost franchising model where there are nonprofits all over the world, and a different one in each country, or in many cases within different major cities within those countries that already work in this field of basically opening up people's cultural awareness to different, like you're saying, different types of families, or diversity, all of these different types of things. There's tons of NGOs that are out there that you could probably put together a model and just start a partnership that you start working with, again, one in the UK, maybe one in Netherlands. I think that would be a great second country for you to explore, because they have a very diverse culture, but generally pretty open. US obviously is going to give you tons of opportunities as well. If you get those three, all of a sudden you've got a global brand. You've got a product that's going to make it much easier when you go to that the next time. The caveat of that approach is, while once you get to know a nonprofit and they get comfortable with you, they are generally pretty open about anything that you're willing to do, especially if it's more affordable than anything that's on the market right now. Because most small scale and even mid-sized nonprofits, they're desperate for help. They're happy to do anything like this that is not going to cost them a lot of extra money. However, by its very nature, the industry is also kind of resistant to creative ideas. So it will take some time. It will take some exploratory, and there will be some false starts. There will be some conversations where, oh, hey, this feels like it's going great, but then 6 months into it, for some reason that is completely doesn't make any sense to you at all as a business person, they're going to pull out. So you just have to accept that fact. So that I would never say, hey, put all of your eggs into that basket. But what I would say is, because you're a student, and I don't know how much longer you have, before you finish your degree, but that would be one area I think that you could go out and explore. And it's not going to cost you a ton of money. It might cost you, some effort and doing that, but you also could recruit people to help you do that. You could do some networking, both through the founders and mentors, but also just through online, because this is something else that a typical entrepreneur greatly overlooks. Like I said earlier, if we do our job right when we're coaching or consulting a startup, we help them create ambassadors from people that don't even buy their service themselves. The next thing that we do when we do it right is we give them access to volunteers. Typically speaking, people only volunteer for a nonprofit. But if you have a for-profit business that is designed to first do good in the world, but with a profit margin, people are okay with that. People will say, "Oh, yeah, what do you need? What type of connections?" Like, yeah, let me rack my brain and think about who I might know that can help you there. And really, that's the unfolding of the entire creative impact approach. Is at the surface, it's very straightforward. Just think about what good you can do. But there's so many additional layers of complexity, and really, when you get down to those deeper layers, what we're talking about is not just your network.
And Farah, I guess I will.
But the networks of your network, of a viral idea, just by this is the type of partner I'm looking for. Who knows somebody that might know somebody there? And again, there will be a lot of false starts and dead ends on that. But it is something that is more time intensive than money intensive. So if you don't have investors yet, or you're trying to avoid investors in order to maintain the purity of your vision, this is one of those things that you can get there with basically what we call sweat equity, of just putting in the hours and chasing down those leads and not getting discouraged because you almost turn it into NGOs before I get my 3.
Thank you.
And Trent, I just want to say one last thing, and that is with regard to growth strategies, Farah. For me, I think you've got a great start with what I would call the content, and I think it starts with yourself. Think of yourself as a pebble hitting the water and all of the ripples going out in all directions. You don't need to think about the far shore and trying to get there as far as how do I market to someone in another country or another continent. Start with your growth strategy being those that are closest to you. Start with those who have been involved with you thus far in being able to do this, and make sure it's relevant to them and to their world. And as you do it, be relevant to those circles that are closest to the people that you're working with and move outward. Because in my opinion, the best growth strategy starts from the middle and goes out in all directions. So, that will also take care of your economic engine, in my opinion, because what happens is that the people who are working with you all the way to all of the stakeholders that you're going to be touching will have that same personal accountability that you and those that are closest to you right now. So start with your closest neighbor and work your way to outward. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Farah, for stepping up and being our first presenter. I believe that we have Emma up next.
Sorry, technical issues. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much, first of all. This is really interesting, and Farah, what a great concept and story, and it's just there's so much value from today, so thank you for that. My name's Emma. I am the founder of a startup called Cassette Monkeys. Just lower my hand. So this kind of all stemmed from my personal experience. About 10 years ago, I had a virus, which was a kind of coronavirus. I did not bring coronavirus to the UK or to the world, but yeah, I had a coronavirus 10 years ago, didn't know what it was. Doctors told me that there was nothing physically wrong, aside from it being just sort of a regular cold or flu. Long story short, I went a year without being able to breathe properly, but wasn't believed the entire time. Because of this, I developed very severe anxiety. We now know that COVID and coronaviruses can cause anxiety directly. And I ended up on an anti-anxiety medication, immediately felt quite drugged up, did not want to be on it, tried to come off it. Doctors refused to let me come off it, and ended up being on it for 4 years. And they actually increased my dosage. Now, before this, I was very healthy. I used to play football for Fulham and had traveled the world and lived a very active, full life. After being on it for 4 years at the highest dose, I started having heart palpitations, and it got very severe. I was a full-time teacher at the time. And it would happen in the middle of teaching a class. It would happen when I was having dinner with friends. So I was living in France at the time. I came back to the UK in 2016, and I went to the doctors explaining what was happening, and had found out in that meeting that I should have only been given the drug for a week maximum. So at this point, I've been on it for 4 years. Upon knowing this, I came off the drug. I was offered a sister drug, but when you've just been told something like that, you have a drastic decision to make. And I thought I might go through hell for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, but then I'd be free from this drug and could move on with my life and rebuild my life. What I wasn't expecting was for it to last 5 years. So in 2016, my life turned upside down. Overnight, I basically stopped being able to function normally. I had 35 ambulances over 4 years. The first times my heart was at 180 BPM. And I basically was isolated and mostly housebound for 5 years. The same thing happened again. I was going to the doctors, and they were telling me that it was just anxiety, and it was just in my head, and that nothing was wrong, despite the fact that I said the timeline fits with this drug. They were denying that would have had effects from any longer than 4 weeks. So finally, in 2019, I found out that it was the drug, a benzodiazepine. It's your Xanax, it's your Valium. It was a sister version of that. And realized the scale of this issue and the fact that there's no support available, as I found out very directly. My only support system at that point, bearing in mind that friends and family, for the most part, couldn't understand because they were trusting in the doctors telling me that nothing was wrong. So my only support system was my music and art, creativity. I started writing songs. I was a musician before I played in bands. And I, again, turned to music and wrote my first song while still very much housebound. And it landed me a record deal. And it got played on BBC Introducing, and it was amazing. And I felt like things were maybe turning around. But anyone who knows the music industry knows how challenging it is. And it didn't really turn my life around in any way. And I just thought, oh, I've got the health issue and I've got the ability to write songs, but I can't make a living from it. How, what do I do here? So I began developing an idea for a film. The film is called Playing with Life, the soundtrack, and it basically follows this story. And the premise is that I'm writing the soundtrack for the film, and then the plan is to put a band together, go on a world tour. So I started putting things into motion to create this film and raise awareness of this issue, and sort of mental health and health sovereignty, holistic healing, all these kinds of things. And I then got into Web3, the NFT space, and I realized the power of community building. And so I began to sort of marry these ideas together. And I came up with a concept for Cassette Monkeys as a way to build community around the film. And from there, started building a team. And from there, it started evolving into a startup in its own right, where we can support people that are sort of related to the elements of the film. So mental health, creativity, informed consent around pharmaceuticals. And that's the kind of premise for the startups. You've got the startup, you've got the film. And our plan with the startup at the moment is to develop a metaverse experience where, for example, there'll be lakes, mountains, forests. You could go to a gig or an exhibition in our jungle bar, this virtual reality jungle bar. And then maybe on a Saturday, you could go to a breathwork class or a meditation class in our rooftop lounge area of this ecosystem. The final piece of the puzzle is realizing that the community we could serve, the market out there, the people that are dealing with mental health challenges, people that are creative, musicians, artists, and the wider community as well, people that just enjoy music and art. We realize that there's potential to actually just create our own record label and turn Cassette Monkeys not only into a brand around these issues, but into a very tangible business model that could support musicians and artists and help them utilize Web3, DeFi to create sovereignty, financial freedom, and actually support mental health and professional development within that ecosystem, with the film then being a sort of marketing arm of that. So that's kind of me and the startup in a nutshell, the biggest challenge that I have, as you can probably imagine, is sort of figuring out the pieces of this and how it fits together. We've identified 4 potential main revenue streams for Cassette Monkeys, but it's really a case of sort of identifying which one is the primary, which is hard to do when you don't have the money to test ideas out and create prototypes and all this kind of thing. And the Web3 space moves so quickly. So I'm at the point now where I'm just figuring out sort of how I move forward in developing it into a robust business plan, whilst also trying to sort of raise the funds to make that happen. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible story. Go ahead, Trent.
No, I was just going to thank you very much for sharing and just being so open. It kind of took my breath away listening to you, having such a deep origin story is definitely going to give you the foundation you'll need to get past the rocky times. And just like any type of business, there are rocky times ahead. But yeah, I could probably talk for about an hour now about where I could see this going. But again, I'll defer to Doug for the first. And is Simon listening? Do we only have 5 minutes left, or? All right. Well, I guess Simon will tell us when we have to stop. So,
Okay.
Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing. Like what Trent said, I would love to be able to dig into this, but I'll use his words a little bit here. Your origin story is amazing. It resonates with lots of people. You are not alone. And I think you're on the right track from a community development perspective. Again, I think part of what has to happen is that people who want to run for-profits need to think like nonprofits. And conversely, people who run nonprofits need to think a little bit more like for-profits. And our goal really is to merge those into one, to create corporate social responsibility, which is the same thing as corporate stability from a financial perspective. So a couple things, I'll just reiterate some of the things I've already said. From a nonprofit perspective, I think you're on the right track, recognizing that you need an economic engine for this, but that you're sharing your journey all along. So I would recommend that if you don't have a website right now, get one, post your story, start to build momentum and start to build followers who resonate with your story. And you'll be able to use that network to be able to test some of these financial models. But I think the idea really is community development. And what I would recommend is that make sure that you have a board of advisories around you, a group of friends, one that you can just go ahead and bounce these things off of from a corporate social responsibility and a personal accountability perspective, but also have a board of directors, a group that's going to be very focused on this from a financial perspective. Remember, as soon as you incorporate, you have birthed a child that has as much right to live as any of us on this call. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble sometimes is that as board members, we recognize that, oh, we've got to keep this baby alive, as opposed to what was the dream of the founder, or what is the dream that we collectively have that we're trying to live out. So I know we only have a couple of minutes here, but I think as you're doing this and you're getting to that point of being able to test the waters on these financial models that you've developed, I think the biggest thing that I would also add to you is that be true to yourself. Don't try to follow the money and chase the money, so to speak. Be true to yourself, be true to the people who are closest to you, and build those circles outward, just like we talked about with Farah. There's a lot of people who are going to resonate with this story, and the economic engine and the community building and the community support will also include the financial side of this as you're true to yourself. And there's tricks to that. There's definitely some ways that we can help going forward with, shaping the vision, creating retreat facilitation, as you're putting the board of advisors or the board of directors together, how you align with other partners. how you include accountability within your organization and the assessment of that as you're going through. But most importantly, remember, there will be conflict in all of this. Not all conflict is bad. And there are tricks to conflict resolution. So I'll just kind of stop there and let Trent throw in a few things before we get cut off.
Community. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that if I'm hearing correctly, that's your goal. It's, yes, you have a business, you have an idea, you have some products, and you have a lot of potential, but it really comes down to creating your own definition of success with this project, and that definition might not be monetary. That definition might be, how many people can this community of yours help? And it's I'm delighted to hear they're already diversifying the revenue streams. And I would just encourage you to also consider, from a personal perspective, take it from somebody who's been down this road with starting a nonprofit that was not providing personal revenue. Consider how you also can diversify your own personal revenue streams, because the more of that you have coming in, the easier it will be for you to resist the easy wins of, somebody wants to come along and give you a lot of money to go and do something that's going to take this whole thing in a direction different from where you wanted it to go. Mm-hmm. That will end up making lots of money and maybe even reaching lots of people. But if it reaches a lot of people with a diluted message, it's not necessarily, a great thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. That's something that's one of those hardest lines to walk with what you're doing right now, is that battle between principles versus progress. The good news is, like I said at the beginning, your origin story gives you that foundation that a lot of people don't have, that should make it much easier for you to resist the easy wins and keep your course true.
Yeah, I think a really good point. I think the main challenge that I have right now is, in order to get to a certain point where we have the seed funding and the leverage to kind of move forward with the film and with the development of Cassette Monkeys, there's a certain amount of obviously reaching out to investors, whom for them, the priority is, where's my 30x return? And so it's kind of, for me, on a personal level, I'd be happy to make 1/10 of what is possible if that social impact can be factored into the ROI. I would be fine with that. That's my sort of philosophy. But when it comes to bringing other people on board that can finance this, it's sort of, where do you strike that balance between keeping them happy and sticking to your goals?
Yeah, and I wish I had an easy answer for that, but there isn't one. But just also be aware that this is where a lot of people get knocked off course, and where a lot of really wonderful ideas end up being basically mediocre at the end of the day in terms of their impact. That they might look all shiny and successful and like, wow, that's amazing at the end of the day, but if you ever took what that looks like now and just flashed up against it what it could have been, frequently what you end up with is a shadow of the ladder. So I think we are out of time. I'm not sure what's up next on the agenda, but I again want to thank you for sharing, and definitely encourage you to get in touch with us. Join one of our communities. We've got some stuff coming up in the UK. With some retreats. And actually, our global retreats partner is in London, so you might actually find him here at the event. We have a little booth. Sorry, you're live. You're not at the event, but. Get in touch and we can connect you. Maybe there's some work we could do together there. Because again, that's what's really resonated with me, is just this potential for community and how you can help people help themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much, Thibaut.
And just remember, you're not doing this alone. People can facilitate that corporate development as well as the personal accountability. So just don't feel like you're alone in all of this.
That's great to know, and I think that's probably one reason why we're all here today, is it can feel like that as founders. So yeah, really excited to connect with you all and see what can happen. So thank you again.
And until Simon kind of cuts me off, I'll kind of continue this, that, the idea here is that, not all partners, I can take this from my for-profit experience as well, working with different organizations, not all partners are equal, or as we like to say in the States, not all shades of all money is the same shades of green. So you really do have to go through and evaluate those partnerships, what they're going to mean to you, what they're going to mean to your organization, to your stakeholders, to your vision long term. I know I walked away from a multi-million-dollar infusion of capital at one point to one of my organizations. And really it was because I didn't have peace over the fact that I thought the relationship was not the best one for where we wanted to go with the vision. I just didn't feel like we shared the same value structure. Convinced my partners that that was the right thing to do, even though it was not good in the short term from a cash flow perspective. We found out months later that the partner, somebody else did take that partnership opportunity, ended up on the front page of the New York Times, and people went to jail because people abused that partnership and did some bad things out of it. So trust your gut, but make sure you're not doing it alone. Make sure you have other people that are also around you who can kind of absorb this. And remember, if you're presenting something and you're so passionate that you come across angry, it's probably not a good sign. But if you can come across and there's an air of humility in your definitiveness, then you're probably in a good position. And those are just some of those little cues that we look for from being in the trenches year after year after year.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's finding that balance, isn't it, between sort of the personal element to it. As founders, we all have some kind of personal attachment to what we're doing, obviously, while sort of remaining objective and keeping our eye on the other side of the fence. How would the clients or customers see this? How would investors see this? And it's an interesting line to walk sometimes.
And I can't underscore enough the idea of financial storytelling. We all get really good at being able to tell our own origin stories where we want things to go from a vision perspective. But if we can't talk about this with a financial side of things, the investors won't come, the purchasers won't come. Commerce is a good thing. It brings people together, and we can do it with a good corporate social responsibility and personal accountability. And the personal accountability is a big part of this in differentiating between true corporate social responsibility and greenwashing. So you have to live it out, and people will recognize that you are true to yourself and true to what it is that you're saying to the world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this maybe isn't a quick question to answer and something that we might sort of discover throughout today and ongoing, but if you could pinpoint sort of 3 bits of advice for all the founders in the session, in terms of, I would say the majority of us don't have that financial expertise or sort of constructing a business model. What would be sort of the 3 main tips that you could give everybody to take steps towards that? Would it be trying to find a partner who does have, maybe a CFO that you could bring on board, an equity partner? Would it be joining an accelerator? What sort of has helped, or what have you seen has helped other people?
I think the easiest part really is don't get ahead of yourself. There's times where I've brought in CFOs prematurely, and you get too corporate about that. Remember, my apologies to any CFOs that are out there, but as a CEO, my role with the CFO is that I always have a talk with them and say, you're the report card writer. I want you to objectively write the report card of which the leadership team and the operations teams are going to go and operate off of and lead from. But you're not there to run the organization. Yes, there's financial things that have to happen from a regulatory perspective, but don't get ahead of yourselves. Don't be the tail, be the dog, so to speak, and don't let the tail wag the dog. Financial literacy will come. Everybody here is balancing their checkbook. To be able to go from a checkbook to a P&L to a balance sheet is not that hard. The idea of people throw around terms like KPIs, key performance indices. We're in a new generation. Everything up to this point from a for-profit perspective for KPIs is very, very objective. As we start to incorporate more nonprofit types of practices into this, our KPIs become much more subjective, and we're creating new areas from which to be able to do this. So don't underscore yourself. Just because you may or may not have a business degree doesn't mean you can't practice business. You can't be a leader in business. You can't change the way business is practiced around the world. So it's not rocket science. Start with those that are closest with you and work your way out. And when you feel like you need to incorporate. When you feel like you need to hire an employee, hire that employee. But really, it's relationship driven. The relationships will lead to the transactions. I came of age in the 80s, going to business school. Everything was about transactions when I got out into the real world, so to speak. But what I learned in business school in the 80s was, it was all about relationships, and we were looking at Asian management philosophies. And I had a chance to spend some time with Chairman Mao's grandson at one point. Didn't know who he was when I was talking to him. We started talking about the difference between relationships and transactions. And it was fascinating to really have this underscored that if you do transactions first, you may or may not ever get to relationships. But if you start with relationships, they will lead to transactions because people will want to be a part of what you're doing. So lead with the relationships, don't lead with the transactions. They will come.
I think that's so poignant for everybody here. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I certainly face at the moment, and I'm sure many other people do, is you want to reach those people. You want to find those people that you're going to be able to build relationships with. And I know specifically for Web3, competition is so fierce for attention that you've got projects that have sort of £200,000 marketing budgets in order to get their projects out there. And so there's this sort of, you want to build organic growth, but you also know that you're competing with projects and companies that have a budget to hire a team that can exponentially grow that organic growth. And so how can you sort of address that issue in terms of reaching the right people in a competitive way from a financial standpoint and a business standpoint as well?
I think, part of it is as a founder, we also have to recognize what our role is going to be long term. And sometimes it means giving up some of the leadership here. I've seen some very successful organizations where the founder recognizes his or her limitations and may become the head of marketing, so to speak. Because that is where they're best at, is basically sharing that story and getting people enthusiastic about it and being that charismatic leader from a professional perspective, but allowing a paid CEO or president or whatever to be able to do the things that need to be done to run the organization. I'll say this, same thing happens at the end. We're not really talking about this because we're really talking about founder side of things, but everybody has an exit strategy in mind. And you have to be thinking with that exit strategy in the back of your head. And what's going to happen from a success perspective? And is success going to change you? It usually does. And it's, again, a good thing to have those right people around you, that if all of a sudden you start to see the dollar sign, so to speak, and not the impact, you have people that are closest to you to remind you of how to balance that. And in the end, you may sell it for the right reasons. You may not. But again, you need to be thinking not only from a sustainability perspective, but also from a succession planning perspective, all the way through exit. As a founder of an organization that was on the beginning stages of telemedicine, our goal in the beginning is that medicine and telemedicine would become synonymous. And today it is. We're speaking today over technology that we were dreaming of 25 years ago and being able to make that work. Now, did I financially benefit from that? No, but I can remember when we were getting ready to merge our organization and then go public, that, I was the guy who basically changed and went from saying, okay, our dream is that telemedicine was going to replace medicine and it was going to help populations around the world, to, hey, our trajectory is that we're growing faster than anybody else in the world, and we're the number 4 in the world for our revenue right now. We could be number 1 in 2 years. Why do we need to merge? We could own this entire market. And my partners basically came in and said, Doug, what was the dream in the beginning? And I kind of put my head down and said, it was to be able to empower this movement, so to speak. And to use a nonprofit term, movement in a for-profit organization 20, 25 years ago was unheard of. But it helped us with that growth strategy. And the same thing happened. We started small. We started with the island of Trinidad and worked our way to the point where it went around the world. But we didn't grab for it. We started small and built our relationships by taking care of our stakeholders, not as customers, but as stakeholders. We just loved them, and it took care of itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like the ripple analogy that you used earlier. That makes perfect sense.
I'm still talking here. Trent, are we getting cut off, or?
I am not sure. He told me we had until 1:30, or sorry, 1:30 UK time, and we're at 1:45. But I didn't see the rest of the agenda. It's been
well, we have another request to keep going. So Lily has volunteered to step up. If we still have time, why don't we get Lily on here?
I just, so everybody knows, I'm still recovering from COVID. I was in bed most of the week, so my energy levels are starting to fade quite quickly, but seems like Doug's got some time and energy, so I think I'll mostly listen, but go ahead, Lily.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me a chance. Doug, was actually typing an email to you just in case you got cut off. So thank you for this opportunity. Yes, Trent, I'll try not to be too long so that, we save your energies. So my name is Lily Makaleng, and I am in South Africa. And pretty much I've started an early stage company called Wonderfully So, and it's a travel company focused on travel in Africa. And from the very beginning, before I even started this company, my mission was, how can I, as an African, change the narrative around Africa? That's the goal. And I just I made it a point for me to say, how can I then align that to a passion of mine, so that it's something I can work on and be focused on and be passionate about solving, even, 10, 20, 30 years from now. And that's when I brought together my love for travel as well as my love for my country, my continent, in Wonderfully So. And what the goal, I can say this, when I started, what I wanted to do and where I am are two different things. I am not quite getting what I wanted to achieve. When I started, my goal and my mission in changing the narrative was that not only am I going to use travel to change the narrative around travel, but I'm going to actually use the money we're making from the company to actually empower the locals directly. Because what happens is we talk about locals benefiting from tourism a lot in Africa. However, when you do actually take a step back and go ask people, did you benefit from, the numbers that they're mentioning? They'll talk about the tourism industry being in the billions, and you go to the ground and you try to see who actually benefited from that. You will be shocked that not really the locals are benefiting. And that is what I am focused on doing. And in doing so, what I did, I came up with the concept of, okay, why not let not just only qualified people, but ordinary citizens actually take you into their neighborhoods, step into the world as a traveler. And we're targeting conscious travelers who are also, looking to impact as they travel. So taking those conscious travelers into the communities of locals, and then letting the everyday citizen be able to earn from that directly on their own. In doing so, that not only helps the locals earn and make money for themselves, but it also changes how they see themselves. And in starting the company and just, building momentum slowly, I've got a small team and trying to then onboard the locals to say, come, let's work together. I got to really see that this was more difficult than I imagined, because the locals, one, were not actually keen to come on board. It's been one of the biggest challenges. And when I try to investigate that, I found that people don't really think they have much to show in their neighborhood. So they're actually ashamed of where they live, and they feel like it's nothing, worthy of seeing. And so like there's a lot of educating going around that as well, in terms of just the locals, and then just reinstilling that positivity in them. And as I say, changing the narrative. I thought the narrative was mainly to change it for people outside, but also changing the narrative for the locals themselves about themselves. So that's pretty much what we're doing, but just trying to take travel, first making sure that, we are breaking down that tourism budget or income and revenue or whatever we're making in the country, the economy, and saying let it trickle down to the very locals who are actually supposed to be benefiting, but they're not. And then also impacting positively in the communities that they are in, so that they can develop their communities to be communities they're proud of, communities that they want to take people into, because I believe when we start getting more locals involved and they see somebody maybe doing a tour of an everyday of the neighborhood every day, somebody else will get an idea and be like, okay, why do these people want to come into my community? Why are they coming here, right? And then the next person will say, maybe I can set up something else. And then someone else can, maybe I can provide food, and just letting it be an inclusive empowerment, kind of like in ripple effect, if that makes sense.
I think that it makes perfect sense, and it is again another very compelling story. I'll say this from my perspective: I've done a similar type of project. I think you're further along than I was, or I am, in Washington D.C. So when people come to visit me in Washington D.C., everybody wants to come see the monuments, and I say, well, okay, we're going to see Washington. We're going to see the monuments, but I'm also going to take you to the District of Columbia, the DC part of this. And I'm going to take you into Ward 7 and 8, and I'm going to show you how ordinary people live. And I'm going to tell you that we're not going to be out here after sunset because it's going to be a bit dangerous. But if you do want to be able to spend some time after sunset, I do know of a house where we can kind of hang out. And yes, you will see prostitutes, and yes, you will see drug deals, but you will be safe. And so I understand where you're coming from there. And I think that, one of the things about focusing on ordinary citizens is a good thing, because even the people who I know who are wealthy or famous or infamous, they consider themselves ordinary when they really open up and are truthful with one another. So the idea of bringing people to the fountain, so to speak, to be able to see how it works, I think is very, very powerful. And it supports those local economies to be able to fix themselves. What I think of in terms of kind of the nonprofit side of things, there's a lot of people, maybe not necessarily to South Africa, but other parts of Africa, that are doing mission trips. And in essence, what you're doing is you're bringing people in from a mission trip perspective. And what you're doing is you're connecting relationally to recognize that we have a lot of similarities. And I think that that's good. Again, we're connecting with potential stakeholders. And what's going to happen, I think, out of that is that it's, to me, what I call in-reach versus outreach. A lot of people who do mission work, they go fix Africa, or they go fix Cape Town, when in reality, what really happens when they show up there is they get fixed themselves. And so what happens is that the secret sauce that I think you have is the experience and the relationship, and there's a way to package that and to bottle it so that people recognize that there is a connection there. And then really what's happening is they may go thinking they're going to go fix Africa, but in reality, Africa is going to go fix Western Europe and the United States and beyond. And so I think there's some creative ways to package that type of community development, but you can't go it alone. And so I would recommend, like we've talked about before, get those little groups around you, and they will develop into bigger groups, and, happy to be able to help as you're going along. I think we only have a couple of minutes here, and Trent probably wants to sound in.
Yeah, no, we've got to wrap up. I just got a message from Simon, but I dropped you a note for our Southern Africa coordinator, might be interested, and I also have a connection with a Swiss tourism company founded by a couple of South Africans that I think could be also a partner for you.
Thank you, Trent. Yeah, I'll copy that. Thank you.
Yeah, so please get in touch with me. I'll connect you with the Swiss group, and also probably I could see some benefit within Spirit of the Game South Africa. But yeah, just in conclusion, it's great to see so many female founders here. I don't know if anybody is aware, but 75% of all entrepreneurs around the world currently are men, and we see enormous potential for, you know, the future is female, and also that female founders, I think by dint of the fact you're all here for this, you're more interested in how to use your businesses to do good in the world, not just make as much money as you can. So we're definitely a big fan of empowering female entrepreneurs, both through our one-on-one coaching, but also the Impactful Business Network and the Impactful Women's Network also will tie in to both of those. And you know, just final note on our end, as you see my screen name, spiritofthegame.org/UA, because this is a event at a university. Figured it was a good time to launch our university ambassador program in the UK. And we'll also be working with Simon and the 12 Iranis on that as well. Again, tying together all of these different areas of the communities in order to really finally find the solution to so many of the society's problems. So just wanted to thank everybody for listening in, and let's give our presenters a big round of applause. Thanks for sharing your personal stories, your challenges, and your struggles. Thanks for stepping up.